Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome out to tonight's weekly training for all the members of Tax Sale Support. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. We want to welcome y'all and excited to go over tonight's topic.
Yeah, we do these webinars every week, every Wednesday night. We do it at the same time, and we cover different topics. A lot of times it can be related to things you're doing or things that you're asking us questions about. So first, though, let's talk news and announcements.
Yeah, we've actually set up a 3-day in Las Vegas for mid-October, and so we're going to be getting out more details on it here over the next day or so. But if you're interested in coming out for 3 days with us in Las Vegas, contact us, or we'll also let you know more about it within the next day.
Yeah, 11th, 12th, and 13th are the dates that we're looking at right now for it. And so we will let everybody know when we've got more details here.
Absolutely. So as far as tonight's topic, what we wanted to talk about was buying tax deed land online. It's something we've talked about a lot as far as buying land and some of the advantages of buying land. But tonight we really want to talk about how you can buy land online, really from anywhere in the country, sight unseen.
Yeah, which I think the whole point and the idea here with it being online is that it's something that doesn't require travel. Just a few years ago, the only way you could really buy real estate was, was to travel. To buy it out of state, even then would require travel. Usually, you just happen to travel to buy it and then come back. But it hasn't been that long that you've been able to even buy real estate, online.
Yeah. And so this is actually, a question that we get a lot, especially when we're working with our coaching students or on the coaching members on that level, is we always recommend them getting started buying tax deed land online to begin with. And that's kind of why we kind of want to go over the reasons why we recommend doing this evening.
Yeah. So for starters, it's not something that is location based or location dependent. You can do it regardless of where you're located at. So it really opens the opportunity for everybody. You don't have to be in the right place in order to find some of the right kind of properties.
Yeah, and there's a lot of tax sale investors out there that all scramble to bid on the structures and the homes. And so a lot of times, the land gets overlooked by the other investors at the auction, which means that we can get it at its lowest possible price, and many times we can get it without having to bid, or at least not bid as aggressively.
Yeah, we don't have to. You're not going to deal with the same competition because the land doesn't really have the same appeal that some of the other real estate does when people are thinking about the kind of real estate that they want to go after. They all have an idea about what good property is, and they a lot of times overlook some of the best property there.
Yeah. Another advantage, I guess, to buying tax deeds online is that we don't need to inspect the property before buying, other than at least we don't need to have a physical inspection. When we're buying structured property, we always need to have some type of on-site evaluation done in person, either by us or by somebody we trust before purchasing the property. But with land, most of the time, unless we're buying more expensive or larger, plots that are going to take more money, we can do all of the research from just what we can get online.
Yeah, in fact, you save quite a bit of time in the amount of due diligence that's required for real estate deals. Just switching between, property on just vacant land versus property with some kind of structure or improvements on it. It's dramatically easier to buy the vacant land because you don't have to take so many other things into account that become an issue when there's a structure on the property. It can oftentimes bring up the potential profitability if there's a structure, but it also brings up the potential for a whole bunch of problems.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be a lot more risk involved and also a lot more time involved as well. And so when we're investing in land online, whether that be through the over-the-counter sale or through some type of online auction, we really have the best chance to get the land at the very possible cheapest price. I mean, our coaching students usually won't spend, more than 10 cents on the dollar for even the nicest pieces of land.
Yeah, it's true. In fact, most of the purchases I think are probably well under that.
Yeah.
Which is really pretty amazing.
So we've talked a little bit about land, and we've talked a little bit about why we have students start with land, but what are some of the reasons why we want to avoid improved deeds to begin with? Well, one of the big reasons is there's less of it. It's usually going to be about 20%, 25% of the property on the list. And so there's going to be a lot more land that we can choose from.
Well, yeah, when there are improvements with the property, everything about the value of those improvements are based on the idea that it's in good condition and that it's in usable condition. And so if we're looking to buy those things, we have to be able to verify that they are in that condition. And when you're dealing with tax sale properties, one of the problems you run into is that it's not always normal circumstances that lead a property to end up in the tax sale. So sometimes you have properties that are neglected or that were forgotten about, or could be there because of a death or something like that that's happened. There could be lots of reasons why a tax sale property is there, and it's better for that just to be vacant land, while it's going through all of this, than for there to be some kind of a house that's either not being taken care of or, for all these other problems to arise, because there's not really anybody occupying the home or taking good care of it.
Yeah, well, tax sale investing is really a whole, it's its own type of investment strategy. And so, because of that, when it comes to structures, we don't have the ability to just go through and look through the property or to, have an inspector come check out the property. Most of the time, we're only going to have the ability to see what we can see from the outside. And so in a structured property and first getting started as a tax sale investor, we don't want to put all of that added risk in trying to determine, just by looking on the outside, what are the rehab costs going to be? We'd rather have our students go through and do a more simple land transaction to get a deal underneath their belt with minimal money, with minimal risk, without having that unknown that structures can have.
Yeah, it also simplifies the process of selling the properties dramatically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Selling a piece of vacant land through a quitclaim deed is much easier than trying to sell some kind of a structure or improved property. In fact, yeah, the vacant land you can do with very little work. You can sell it just based on price alone.
Well, you're becoming a rehabber. And the thing about it is it's possible that you could buy structured properties and have somebody else rehab them. But in a way that kind of takes away some of the profit, because most of those people are going to want to, get as much profit as they can if they're going to have to do the rehab and go through quiet title and all that.
Yeah, and you're kind of moving away from your strong point in this whole thing, which is providing the properties.
Yeah, so if you're just looking to wholesale property, you might as well wholesale land versus wholesaling structures, because structures are going to have that whole added risk involved in it. Plus, that's not really the best strategy for that. If you're looking to buy structures, you want to buy structures either to do a flip, to flip it and do a rehab and make, potential profit that way, or for some type of rental property.
Yeah, and really, it's possible to buy those types of properties. I mean, it's possible. You can find some amazing properties sometimes that will come up at tax sales.
We saw some good ones today that sold.
Yeah. In fact, we did see some good ones, and there always are, some good properties that will go up for sale in these places, but they rarely ever sell for cheap. They usually sell for high dollar amounts. When they look really nice. They're not the properties that go without a bid. They're not the ones that get ignored. Those are the ones that we're interested in, the ones that get ignored because people aren't paying attention to them, because really every piece of land has value. Now whether or not it's real world value, we can look at and tell, but they're not making any more land. There's just a limited amount of it, and so I think land has always been one of the best investments.
And went through most of these, really the biggest point is that it does require less capital. When, we are able to, in fact, we just bought a property, last week for $240.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't, you don't need, tens of thousands of dollars to get started investing into tax deeds. You can get started with a minimal amount, just like we went through and showed our coaching students with a $240 investment.
Yeah, well, I think you'll probably learn more by going through with a smaller investment amount, where you're not so concerned about different things that can go wrong. Um, we don't have to worry about any of these factors really with land, or at least a lot of the same factors that would could make or break a deal when it comes to improved properties don't really matter to us. The things that do matter to us with land are really pretty simple. I mean, we're primarily looking at where it's located or how accessible it is, and its size and value.
Yeah, really, we could even put a red line through neighborhood too, and all we're really looking at there is the market and the location, meaning, the use in a way,
Mm,
the use and value. And as long as it has use and value, we're looking at buying it, or we're at least looking at the opportunity to buy it.
yeah. Now, if you want to buy land online through tax sales anywhere, or if you want to buy tax deeds online, there's two different ways you can buy tax deeds online. You can either do it through an online auction, or you can do it over the counter.
Yeah. Now, with online auctions, there's a ton of online auction opportunity taking place right now. With online auctions, many times, the land can get overlooked. And this happens in all tax sales, but it seems like, in some of the online auctions, people can get more aggressive, especially on some of the higher quality structured properties. And so while people are bidding and spending money on these different types of properties, many times there's good pieces of valuable land that get picked up for between 5 to 10 cents on the dollar. And so we're kind of looking for that sweet spot of properties that have both use and value that we can pick up between 5 to 10 cents on the dollar. Now, if it's a good enough property, maybe we're willing to spend more than that for a good piece of land. But that's kind of that sweet spot of what we're looking at when we're participating in these type of auctions.
Yeah, also by sticking with properties that we can generally buy for that low of a price, you're rarely ever going to get in any kind of trouble with overpaying for something.
Yeah.
Because you're paying so low, small of an amount that everything could go wrong, and you're still in a great position with the property. Unlike if you were to pay market value and then have something go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as far as the online auction providers, there's a number of different companies. In fact, these are just some of the big companies or the larger providers. If there's an online auction taking place, we're going to have that information essentially on the online auction page of the website. But, the most common one being Bid for Assets, Real Auction, Grant Street Group. Those cover a majority of the tax sales that are taking place, or at least a lot of the big ones like Florida and Arizona, California.
Yeah. Over-the-counter deeds are awesome. I think they are an amazing opportunity, especially for vacant land. But they're not going to be available everywhere. They're only available under circumstances where the counties, are not able to sell their properties, and we've got huge collections of over-the-counter properties that the county's sitting on.
Now, one thing that's a little bit different between the online auction list and over-the-counter list is with an online auction, you're going to have just the properties that are coming up for sale. But with the over-the-counters, you're having all of those properties that haven't sold over past the years. So, we're going to have more junk properties mixed in with those good properties in our over-the-counter list than we're going to have just looking at a normal online auction list.
Yeah. In fact, we're going to be
looking at the properties that didn't sell.
Yeah, when we are looking through old county inventory, you're going to find stuff that, lots of junk in there. But then you can also find diamonds in the rough. That's what we're looking for when we're going through over-the-counter deed lists, especially our diamonds in the rough there, because you know, at this point they were properties that were offered at the tax sale, but that weren't purchased, and that have been sitting on the books ever since. And a lot of times, good properties, at least ones that have a lot of visual appeal, will end up selling at auction, and stuff like land gets overlooked. Well, if land is what you want, over-the-counter deeds can be a great way to do it, because you don't have to do anything except for buy it. You don't have to wait out a redemption period. In a lot of cases, you don't have to, you can basically just pay for the property, and in many cases, you can get the property just for what's owed in taxes and fees, or even less.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we're buying these over-the-counter tax deeds, this isn't a tax lien. You're acquiring the property outright. So you're going to receive a deed to the property. That means you can decide what to do with it. You could go ahead and wholesale it. You could, seller financing it. So offer seller financing on the property. You could, if you wanted to, or see the value, go through and get quiet title. But if we're wholesaling it, we're usually going to be selling it for around 50 cents on the dollar. So if you buy it for 10 cents on the dollar, sell it for 50 cents on the dollar, you're still able to offer that property half price off of the market value, or at least even the assessed value or market value, and still able to make a huge return and still offer it at probably the cheapest price that's available in that area.
Yeah. Well, one of the challenges with over-the-counter properties, and one of the reasons why more people don't understand and know that they exist, is because none of them have the same terminology or name for what they are selling. You'll see counties call it anything from from county held land to struck off to the leftovers. We've got a lot of the more official terms here. Assignment purchasing, is one, or tax forfeited land. Whichever state it is you're buying from is probably going to have a term that is specific to them, because I don't know there are too many that use the same terms.
Yeah, I just even looking at here, they don't, we have county owned, but actually county held is another one that's a lot of time used. Forfeited land. There are a lot of different terminologies, and what we'll try to do is list the terminology within the state profiles and how they use that terminology within that state.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier when you know what it is that you're looking for. But every state seems like they have their own term for land that is held by one of the county governments because of delinquent taxes. And what's also good is that more and more of these counties see the internet as a good way for them to unload some of this stuff. Let's review what it is that we're looking for in a piece of land. If we're looking to buy property, what are the factors or the characteristics that matter to us?
Well, the first thing that we're always checking is going to be property size. That's going to really determine, is the property buildable, is it usable? If we see small property, 0.04 of an acre, less than 1/10 an acre, we're at least going to look a little bit more into it, or be a little bit more wary of buying it.
Yeah, anything that's smaller than 1/10 an acre has a limited amount of use or potential use. And what we're trying to determine by looking at the size of the property is its ability to be used for its intended purpose. So, if we're talking about a property that's zoned here residential, then we want to make sure that it is big enough for residential use, which would mean putting a house on it, or something like that. So we're looking for properties that are going to be, well, the bigger the better in most cases, but we generally try to stay away from stuff that's smaller than 1/10 of an acre.
Yeah, the only exception would be in areas where they may have smaller lots, or something like a mobile home lot or something like that, where there's similar type lots or similar size lots that are currently being used for a purpose within that area. Usually looking at the properties that are surrounding the the lot that we're looking at can tell us a lot about what that lot is.
Yeah. In fact, the surrounding properties are great tools for estimates when you're looking for comps. The property value is also really important to us. And in fact, it's not even just the property value, but it's the property's bid to value ratio, what it's costing us versus what it's estimated to be worth, what the county assesses that value at. And if we can see evidence of, what the value has been historically.
Yeah. One thing that we're going to check as we're looking at property is what's the difference between the assessed value and the market value. The assessed value and the market value could be pretty close, or the market value could be higher or lower than the assessed value. And that's something that we're going to want to check as we're researching property to determine, exactly what is that assessed, what is the difference between the assessed value and the market value.
Oh yeah, Dan had a good question, and I'm actually not sure on this. He's asking, is assignment purchasing usually used with deeds or liens, or both, like in Arizona? And assignment purchasing, I think, is only
liens.
And it's usually, is it specifically one state?
Well, I know that Arizona uses that terminology.
Yeah, I can't think of any place outside of Arizona that uses the terminology for assignment purchasing.
Right.
Yeah, I think it is. In fact, I think it's only Arizona that uses the term even assignment purchasing. For their
tax liens. There may be something like assignment or something like that, assignment purchase for some type of deed where they use that as a terminology, but assignment purchasing is kind of a terminology used for Arizona tax liens.
Yeah, it is kind of unique that way. The other factors, obviously accessibility for the properties too, but that's going to be kind of a part of its location here and where it's at. The property's use is really what's going to give that property value. It's why somebody would buy it, and that's part of what we're looking into when we're trying to determine what the property is. It's what its potential use is and if it can be used for that.
Yeah, exactly. That's something we always talk about. We're looking for both value and use. Making sure that the property has both an assessed value and a good market value. And then also, like Shade said, making sure that the property has an intended use, whether that be for commercial or residential or industrial, that it's buildable, that it's usable. We want to avoid those type of properties that are 5 feet by 100 feet or some type of side lot that is unbuildable. Those lots don't have any value to us because they only have possible value to whoever is the bordering neighbor. We want a property that we could sell to anyone and that anyone could use for that intended purpose.
Yeah. Now, it's also important with property use. The zoning of the property can dramatically affect the value of the property and how the property is generally valued. In other words, certain agricultural or there can be certain designations for property that basically it's not necessarily limiting the property, but it's a reflection of what the property is. Like the way that they do with agricultural lands. But there's a big difference between property like that versus residential or commercial property. For the most part, the stuff that we end up sticking to and buying the most is residential or commercial because they generally have the highest value and they're the ones that we know the most about.
Well, it's usually the one they're most generally available.
Yeah.
But really, we'd look at any type of piece of land, regardless of the classification, whether it be hunting or farmland. We're just going to really look into the market value. It's just there's less of it's more common to have obviously residential of some type, whether that be just your building lot, like a building residential lot, or if it's 20 or 30 or 40 acres of residential.
Yeah, it's important though going into it to know exactly what kind of property is, because it could very easily affect the exit strategy and who your potential buyers might be. If you're looking at one piece of property thinking it can be used for residential use and it's actually some kind of
residential recreational, where it's like you know, where maybe they don't even allow you to build a home, but you can build little cabins, or, you know, there's just different restrictions that you're going to want to look into.
Yeah, the zoning is, can be an important thing to look into, and yeah, restrictions can be an issue. You know, you don't want to buy a property thinking you can slap a trailer there just to find out the trailers are not allowed.
Yeah, and that's the reason we'll always look at the surrounding property area just to get an idea using a GSI map or the county's GSI map to see, is this lot or is this property similar to the other properties around it? Does it have a similar size? Is you know, a lot of things similar on it? And then we know that it's going to be, you know, it's going to have the similar restrictions or uses as the properties next to it.
Yeah, here's another good question. The question is, you know, when I call Mississippi, they use the term patent, and when they referred to the tax lien and deed, you know, have you heard of that? And actually, it's a good question, and it dates back to probably back to before Louisiana was even a state, back to when it was, before it was owned, before it was American.
Yeah, this is a Mississippi, but yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's just an old term, but pretty much what they're doing is they're just giving you, you know, full interest to the property.
Yeah, land patents are just a different terminology that they use, but land patents are essentially deeds. They are just simply property deeds, and so, like, in Mississippi, you know, you can replace the term patent with deed, and it's pretty well, you know, the same thing there. You know, just a difference in terms really is all. And what they do in Mississippi is it's a tax lien state that has tax liens that they sell, but there's also, they have liens that don't sell, and the liens that don't sell are foreclosed on by the counties after 3 years, I think it is, and they're offered up at auction. So Mississippi actually sells both tax liens and tax deeds, although they call them patents. So they sell tax liens and then land patents. So yeah.
So, you know, what kind of land do we want to target? What kind of land do we want to go after?
Really, we want land, well, when we're looking at different kinds of land we want, I think a lot of it's going to be about the price that we're going to pay and the estimated value on it.
And also what we're going to be doing with it as well. You know, are we going to be wholesaling this piece of land to another investor? Or are we going to be taking this piece of land through quiet title to, you know, to try to get a warranty deed on the property?
Yeah, which, you know, we should know before we buy it whether we're going to pursue quiet title on the property or not. You know, and kind of what the general exit strategy is going to be. You know, if we're not pursuing quiet title, then our objective should be to get it out there in the market and you know, wholesale it as quickly as we can. And you know, or unless we're looking to use seller financing, it's basically the same thing though. We want to get it out there, and so that we can start finding a you know, a buyer for it here immediately. But we're also looking for you know, yeah, land that's not going to require an on-site evaluation. You know, we're looking for land that we can get for a good low price, you know, for 10% of market or less, let's say. You know, and also, you know, land somewhere where we know we can be profitable with it. Although a lot of that profitability has to do with what you can buy it for.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if we're able to buy property for 5, 10, 15 cents on the dollar, then almost every market we're going to be able to be profitable, whether we decide to wholesale it or sell it with a warranty. Essentially, that's kind of the difference, is if we wholesale it, we're selling it unwarranted, and if we, you know, sell it through market value or sell it with market value, we're selling it warranted. But in doing that, usually for properties that are 15 to 20,000, under that, we'll go ahead and just wholesale them. And for properties that are over that, that's where we'll look into, does it make sense to go through quiet title?
Yeah, which quiet title is the process that we go through to turn a tax deed or a quitclaim deed into a warranty deed again. which doing that, turning that tax deed into a warranty deed will make that property eligible to be sold for market value with financing. Basically anybody could buy that at that point for market value because you have an insurable title to it. You've got a warranty deed.
Yeah. So what kind of land do we want to target? And we'll actually kind of go through and explain all these here in a minute, but each one. But
okay. Let's see. So do you want to read
well,
through
I
these?
guess we can. Essentially just improved and non-improved residential land and non-improved commercial land.
So when we say improved and non-improved, when you're looking at vacant land, it's not always quite so clear. Whether or not it's improved isn't necessarily about whether or not there is a home there. Because you can have land that is still it has improvements there or that are in improved areas. For instance, it's the difference between an area that has had somebody come through and prepare it for a neighborhood, meaning that they have put in sidewalks and roads and things like that, so that basically people that want to build, simply all they need to do is basically build. They've got everything there.
Yeah, exactly. Approved residential lot's going to have curb and gutter and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, access to power.
Yeah, usually the lots will have individual lot will have power within somewhere with it close to the lot. When we're talking about non-improved, it may not have any of that. It's probably going to be larger pieces of land. Usually non-improved is larger in size or hasn't been developed.
Yeah, one of the questions is, is there over-the-counter land with land banks? Land banks actually are over-the-counter land. That's really what it is it's over-the-counter land. What's different with the land bank is that the land bank is basically a nonprofit that the county created to help them manage their over-the-counter land. So what the land bank does a lot of times is it helps them figure out of all the county held land that they have, they help them manage it, figure out which ones have the most potential, and try to help them sell all of their county held land. So that's really all that the land bank properties are, is just old over the counter inventory.
Yeah.
All right, and so let's see here. If there's different kinds of land that we avoid, some of those characteristics are pretty easy to identify. It's having very low assessed value, although the assessed value can't always be 100% clear.
Yeah, usually we'll use it as an indication, and we'll also kind of base it based on other properties within the list that we're looking at or within that county. But we have purchased properties that may have an assessed value of $1,500, but that's because the assessed value is 20 years old. And the market value. That's the reason we always check the assessed value versus the market value. But usually if it's a lower dollar, $500,000, something like that, it could be junk land. That's where we're going to look more into it to see, does it have some type of use?
Yeah, we avoid anything that is that has this small, irregular shape, any strips. We avoid any of the properties that are landlocked as well. Between the landlocked and some of the smaller irregular shapes, you're able to wipe out a lot of them that you could potentially buy. We're also going to avoid those that have, large government liens, although really we don't always know how big the lien is on them. Like when it just says IRS sometimes, we don't really know. And it wouldn't really matter as, the IRS is actually the one lien where the amount of the lien doesn't matter to us.
Yeah, it could be a city lien too, or
like if we see a city lien, then we want to check and see what the amount is. What I'm saying though is when you see the IRS lien on there, you don't need to check into what the amount is, because the amount doesn't matter with an IRS lien. They're not trying to hold you personally accountable for that amount. With the IRS, they just simply placed a lien against a property, and they have to decide whether they're going to take the property and sell it or release their lien. But you don't have to worry about the actual IRS amount because you can't be responsible for that. And one of the questions is there a good selling market for land? There's actually an well,
really a good selling price.
Yeah, really, when there's a good selling, there's always a good selling market for real estate. Real estate is always desirable, and people are always going to want to buy it. And so really all you've got to do from there is really about the pricing.
Yeah, everything has to do with the price that you're able to buy it for and the price you're able to sell it for. Because, we can even you can sell real estate in a bad market, but still sell it if you're able to buy it for 10 cents on the dollar, and even, let's say you sell it for 40 cents on the dollar, but in 40 cents on the dollar, people are still going to buy real estate within that area that may be slowing down or may not be as growing, just based on the price that you sell it. That's kind of one of the advantages with tax deeds, is that you're able to buy them for so cheap that, at least on this, with using this particular strategy, that even just selling it for 40 or 50% of the asking price, you're still able to sell it for cheaper than anyone else within that area.
Yeah, well, what really happens is when you're able to offer such low pricing, something like how good of a market, how good a market is really just tells you, about how much real estate, is selling in that area and what the prices are doing. But when you do something like drop the price in half, it throws all that stuff out the window, because, a lot of that no longer matters. It's so much more profitable than a lot of other deals. So you can basically turn any market into a good market if you can sell it for the right prices. Properties that may not be attractive in general to people become, highly attractive at the right prices. We can even see some of that when we find properties for, really low prices. I think you can see some of these properties have incredibly low prices, and it's almost shocking, just the kinds of prices that we can get. It's all about price, though, because when people talk about what a market is like, they're basing real estate markets and all that talk is really based on selling things for market value.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's an example of an approved residential lot. You can see there, we're looking at a normal neighborhood, with newer homes within their curb, gutter. And, with this particular, they paid $320 for it. In fact, this was purchased by one of our coaches when he was a coaching student. And you can see there, paid very, very low value for it.
Yeah, it was really inexpensive. And at those kinds of prices, see, when you pay that little for property, you've got every option in the world. You own the property outright. You could sell the property for full market value if you wanted, or you could wholesale it as well. When you buy it at the tax sale, you're totally in control of what you can do there. And if it has a lot of value, it may make sense to sell it for full market value. But a lot of times as a tax sale, it's going to make sense just to wholesale these properties, because you can always buy more.
Yeah, absolutely. This would be an example of a non-improved residential lot. In some ways, it's kind of somewhat improved. Probably not the best example, but it is a good example of a property that, picked up for around 5 cents on the dollar. Picked up about $1,100 worth, just under 20, and is a nice good sized lot.
Yeah, so actually, when you're looking at vacant land, it's probably one of the things you should start to look at and distinguish, is whether you're looking at vacant land that has, that's improved or that's not improved. Meaning, is it ready for a house? Could somebody go and start building there, immediately if they wanted? Or is it more rural and would require additional steps? Is it not something that somebody's going to be able to, are there neighbors nearby?
Yeah, that's the reason this one isn't really the perfect example, because it's just a larger lot, but it is within a neighborhood.
Yeah, mobile home lots though are also big ones, especially in a lot of these areas where people are looking for a place to to put their mobile homes.
Yeah, and that's something you're going to want to look into if you are looking into lots, or to possibly put a mobile home within the area, is to check to make sure make sure there's mobile homes within that area. And that'll at least let you know that, hey, I could talk to the city and make sure that the zoning's correct, that I can do a mobile home there. but then you know, hey, I can buy this property. And what's nice about that is somebody can move a mobile home within there. There's probably, power or something out there near the street that they can tie into.
Yeah, I mean, to give you guys an idea though, in terms of like selling, a property like a mobile home lot, this property is picked up for a couple $100. There are a lot of people out there that are paying a couple $100 every month, just to rent out a mobile home lot.
Yeah.
Where they have their mobile home sitting. And so, having an actual lot or a place to put it, can be, it can be valuable enough to people. And at that kind of a price point too, when you're in at that low of a price, again, when you pay such a low price, it changes everything about how you view and see different properties, because you're not going to buy this property for a few $1,000s, from the tax sale, but when you can pick it up for 5% of what it's worth, then it totally changes.
Yeah, and when we're talking about mobile home lots, there's actually a lot of mobile home lots out there that we'll see where there used to be a mobile home on the property and they've taken the mobile home off. Well, in that particular lot, that means if the mobile home was there, they have the power, they have the sewer, they have the septic tank or whatever was hooked up within there, where you could just bring a mobile home within that lot and now you're selling it as a structured property. You buy a used mobile home or even a newer one, you put it onto the lot, and now you're selling, the property as a structure.
Yeah. Now, a lot of you, I think some of you are scared of commercial land a little bit, I think, and there's no reason at all to be worried about it. Commercial land offers, we love commercial land. In fact, I'm always interested when I see the commercial land, because really it's just like residential. There's just a little bit less of it, so it has a little bit higher value.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing to be afraid of with commercial. Essentially, it's just another type of land, and land is one of the safest ways to invest into real estate. Because even if there's a hurricane or a tornado or a flood or something, land is still going to be there after that. And when we're buying it for so cheap on the dollar, I mean, we really have a strategy where we're just buying land and putting it into a portfolio because you can buy it for so cheap.
Yeah, in fact, in a lot of these places too, the holding cost is something you have to consider when you're looking at property. How much is it going to cost to own property here? And in most of the places that we've been looking at so far, the holding cost is pretty low. But if it's high, that's something that you want to know about, because you don't want to pay, a lot, to hang on to properties. If that's the case, then you want to expedite selling it so that you can limit how much money is going out. But when you buy in some of these places, you could hold it almost indefinitely, and it's not really going to ever cost you anything.
Yeah. So here's an example of a commercial building lot, a commercial lot that was picked up. It's picked up by again, Michael actually bought this property as well. Picked it up for $1,800, was valued about $22,500. He actually ended up selling this property for $12,000. But this would be an example of what would be commercial land. This is actually just a commercial lot, was paved, and was right there within town. But really, commercial land can look exactly like any other type of land. It's usually just going to be in the more commercial area of town.
Yeah. In fact, one of the things to look for with commercial properties are sometimes they'll have improvements listed that you may not see at first. For instance, on this property, the improvements were considered the pavement for the parking lot area there, and I think there was a fence in the back or something like that. There were some small improvements, but they make the area fairly usable. It's also really about location when you're looking at commercial land. Location can be a big factor, like it was with this property. It was a huge factor.
Yeah, well, in commercial property, it's going to have everything to do with location, because it's going to be a certain location that's within that commercial area. And so, a piece of commercial land could look just like dirt, just like a residential lot or anything else. In fact, in some areas, you'll have commercial and residential border each other. So, it really is just kind of what the county or city has designated that area to be. But because it's designated commercial, that means it's going to have a different use versus residential, which can give it some more value and makes it a little bit more rare.
Yeah, with tax sales, sometimes the commercial property that we see is parking around different areas, in places, they can be parking lots, or oftentimes is located near, more near the heart of town. A lot of
I've seen
times.
all kinds of commercial, really. I mean, from buildings before to,
Yeah.
it just really kind of depends
Well,
on the
and
sale.
one of the things that's attractive about commercial property too is that you are attracting a different base of buyer. A lot of times with a lot of the real estate that's out there, you're looking for residential buyers, but with commercial, you can, you have people that are, in fact, I think that Michael ended up selling this to a lady that was, going to use it for some kind of a sales opportunity. She was going to set up something there, because it was a good location in town, to be able to set something up. And so it has real world value. She can probably rent it out on a monthly basis to somebody if she wanted. And then large plots of land, which are always attractive. They're some of our favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. This is where we're looking, not just at your quarter acre, half acre building lot, but where we're looking at larger tracts of land, whether that be 3, 5, 10, 40, 100, acres. Really, size is going to be key when we put large plot of land within there. We're looking for larger pieces of property. And we see these type of properties all the time at different tax sales, where there'll be, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 acres being sold.
Yeah, and a lot of times, so in the normal real estate market, at market value, I mean, it's hard to buy many acres, below a certain price. But when it comes to these tax sales, and you can find properties at amazingly low prices, compared to what their estimated value is. Also, with large plots of land, they oftentimes can be some of the real estate that's priced up above what the cheap stuff is priced at. So you can have a lot of large plots of land that might start at $5,000 to $10,000, or in that area, $5,000 could get you a big plot of land. But it's just not quite the same small investment like you have with some of these really inexpensive ones. But they have a lot of potential. That $5,000 investment could be on a piece of property that's valued at $50,000 or more.
Yeah. So here's
I think this is actually Dan's. I think Dan's actually on the call.
Yeah, 3.1 acres, kind of a larger piece of land. It's really kind of more of residential land, not massively big, but a larger piece of land other than kind of your regular residential building lot.
Yeah, anything bigger than we consider anything over about an acre to be big.
Yeah, acre and a half to, yeah, I'd say an acre. It's going to be bigger than your normal building lot.
Yeah, which they're always, they're always attractive, because they have that use as they've got residential use, plus they just have size. When property has size, its potential for use increases. In fact, large properties can be used for a lot of different things, and so we always love large pieces of property here, especially ones that are naturally landscaped too. We can see a property like this is looks like the majority of this property is the way that it's always been. It's wooded basically.
And usually your larger pieces of land will have more naturally landscaped on them.
Mm-hmm. And we don't have to worry about natural landscaping. It means that we don't have to deal with them trying to remove weeds and things like that.
Yeah, what we want to do and what we're looking at when we're looking at tax sale properties is we want to avoid governmental liens. And so one of the most common governmental lien that can be placed against land is going to be through a city where they're sending somebody out there to clear the weeds, cut the grass, something like that. And so when we see it, like Shade said, naturally landscaped, we know, well, the chances of them sending somebody out to cut the grass is probably pretty low.
Yeah, which, we know that they're not probably sending out those types of liens. It just helps to remove one other category of potential risks, or at least minimize the potential for some of those risks. There's lots of different kinds of land though, and lots of different potential uses. There's recreational land you can find that's for sale, and that can be a lot of fun. Plus, it always has value. People are always looking for it.
Yeah, there's tons of boating, fishing, hunting, camping type of land available in lots of different states. Sometimes if you see farmland, that could be a great investment. It doesn't come up as very often, but when it is, this is actually instead of mobile home lot, mobile home park. We actually did see that was sold this week. Was 18 mobile home park sold for 30 grand in New York.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's something that they don't happen a lot, but we've seen probably half a dozen mobile home parks sell over the last decade or so. That not happen all the time, but you do see those type of things. Vacation land, timeshares isn't something that we invest into a lot, but those do come up as well.
Yeah, they do come up there.
We don't want to get involved in that game though. But
yeah, avoid the timeshares probably. I can't imagine how they would work. Even as a tax deed, they're a bad deal.
Yeah.
So. I would just avoid them probably altogether. But really though, it is smart though to look at properties and the potential uses that they might have, because a lot of times we'll look at property for its ability to be used potentially as storage, or potentially as for people to set up gardens, things like that. So many different potential uses for property, and if you pay low enough price for it, it's just easy to sell. Makes it much easier. The lower you pay, the less you pay for it, the easier it's going to be.
Well, and something that we could kind of mention about some of that land, some of that other type of land, like hunting or fishing land, is that you could do leases on it, where you still own the property, but you lease out the recreate or the hunting rights to some group for $1,000 a year, and that's paying your fee, making some money, paying your property taxes. And essentially they're paying you just to hold on to that property.
Yeah. When you start to buy large pieces of land, leasing them out is always, I think, a great option, because it gives you the ability to maintain ownership without having money, without it being a liability.
And as you continue maintaining that ownership and paying the property taxes, you are in a way kind of, you are increasing your.
You're kind of going through a type of quiet title in a way. Because you are establishing your ownership on it, proving that it's yours and that you're paying for it.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can only make it easier to get through the quiet title process the longer you do that. Until at some point, if you've done it for long enough, the county will just give you quiet title.
Yeah.
Because you've already proven it, essentially. That generally happens, after a couple of years, in places. Or after a certain number of years, you can automatically get a warranty deed on the property, basically, or at least they will minimize any work to do so. So, which can be one of the advantages, I think, of holding some of these properties long term. If you're not in a hurry to get rid of it, I don't see anything bad at all with holding land. I don't think you're going to end up in a bad way at all, especially with these properties and low prices you're at. Basically, while you're holding on to it, it's adding to your net. It's basically, it has that capital and that potential there. It's just
absolutely.
unused.
And especially if the holding costs are low, that's something we're going to look at as well in deciding, what we're going to do with the property, is how much is it going to hold up, how much is it going to cost for us to hold on that property for a year, or maintain ownership. And many times these type of building lots, property taxes could be, under $100, like $30, $40, $50, $60 for an entire year. So, holding on to the property or paying the property taxes only $50 for the entire year, I'll go ahead and pay that $50, and, because I know I'm going to make more than that $50 in just the price of the property appreciation and value going up.
Yeah. Let's see here. Well, I think it pretty much wraps it up here for us tonight anyway. Let me just look and see. Is there another question here? Is there a quick way to identify larger plots of land?
The only way that we've found sometimes you can do it is sometimes it'll state in the legal description, or in
Yeah,
different
the
parts in there,
list.
you can see sometimes.
It's almost kind of, John, almost, it almost kind of depends on the list.
Yeah.
It's like some lists may include it, some lists may not. Sometimes it's easy to tell. It's really going to depend, because some counties will have that information as far as the list size right there within the list. Sometimes we're going to have to check each property to see the size.
Yeah, it's true. Sometimes, they don't have it listed anywhere, and so there's not really a fast way. Other times we can be looking at a list that's in more of an Excel format, and they have a column where they actually fill out the size, and that makes it a lot easier, so that we can kind of scan through and see which ones stand out. But a lot of times there's not. The other thing too is that, besides them going down below a certain amount, the only way you can really get an idea almost to know if it's good is to see a map image of it.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way you're going to know if it actually is usable, like if it's accessible and can be used for its intended purpose. A map is the only way you'll know it.
We'll see. We'll find property all the time that, hey, look, there's good 2.5 acres, and we go and look at the property and it's landlocked. And even though it does have value, and it's good land, we don't have legal access to it, and we're not going to go through all the work to find out if we have some type of easement or try to get some type of ownership that'll let us drive onto the property. That's the reason we just avoid any of those land-like properties, but we wouldn't know that until we looked at it. Just looking at 2.5 acres, you'd think it'd be great.
Yeah, they could potentially be investments, but they're going to require additional work, and we try to avoid additional work. But other than that, though, I don't know if there's really a good way to identify large lots other than just you have to pull them up is about the only way you can really do it. But you'll see them, sometimes they're more common in some counties than others. Some counties have a lot of property like that, and some counties rarely have it.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. It's going to depend on the county as well. Some counties will have lots of larger pieces of land.
Oh, it's like their average lot size is like
2 or 3
1
acres,
acre, or 2.
Yeah, exactly. And then others where the average lot size is less than a quarter.
Yeah.
So, but again, thank you guys for attending. We really appreciate you coming out.
Yeah, let us know if you have any questions. You can send those over by way of email. We'll be sure to get to them. Thanks so much.
Have a great evening.